I'm Jeremy Dunham. I'm the Vice President at Psyonix.
Awesome. So when did you come on board?
I started about 2.5 years ago, right around the middle of 2014. I got a pitch from Dave, our CEO, and man, he really let us know just how great Psyonix was. He was like, come on down, meet the team, and make up your own mind, which is kind of an interesting approach. And I came down here, I immediately fell in love with the team and the location. You can't beat San Diego. And I'm really glad I did. It's probably the best decision I've ever made.
All right. How long into the meeting was it before you mentioned soccer and cars?
I think the first time that Dave mentioned soccer and cars was probably actually just sort of an afterthought. It was something that because we were working on a game called Noclip at the time for Square Enix, which is a free-to-play game. And he just sort of said, oh, and we're also working on Rocket League, which is the sequel to supersonic acrobatic rocket-powered battle cars. And I remember that game very well because it was one of the early PlayStation Network's games. When I was in media, I was one of the games worth playing. But it was sort of an afterthought. It's like this other thing we're working on. The focus is really elsewhere. And it was kind of funny because the way that it was presented to me was like something down the line, something eventually maybe to work on, and it's now become the biggest game that we've ever worked on and our main focus. And so it's kind of funny that there was a small mention in the beginning and now it completely runs our lives.
When you came to work here, was the feeling very much that Psyonix was a developer that was predominantly doing contract work, and then there was these sort of passion projects that they do alongside that?
Yeah, when I started Psyonix, it was definitely a contract for hire type of gig, but they had a real desire to want to go out and do something with their passion projects. We'd done that before with supersonic acrobatic rocket powered battle cars, and we owned completely the multiplayer for games like Bulletstorm. But it was something that the team was fully capable of doing and really wanted to do, but because of the economics of video game development and all that, we had to put business first, and we're focused on doing the contract work first. But since that time, it's really changed, and we're happy to say that contract work is big time thing of the past.
You said you remember battle cars from your time working in the media. Could you remember much about it, or?
Oh, I remember battle cars very well. Yeah, because in those days it came out in 2008, and that was still in the experimental phase of PlayStation Network. Xbox Live had been around for a while, but it was still only a couple years old. Came out in the end of 2005. And at that time, a lot of the games that were released on the PlayStation Network and Xbox Live were looked at as sort of inferior games that weren't on the same level as the AAA store-bought releases. And whenever something that was pretty interesting, either in concept or just in quality came along, it was easy to take notice because there weren't a lot of those. A lot of the games available then felt like ports of other games that had appeared on maybe mobile or some of the smaller PC titles. So it was definitely memorable. You don't hear about soccer playing or our cars playing soccer that often, so it was very easy to think back and remember how that game arrived.
What are the challenges in attempting to market a game that is about soccer playing cars?
Wow, there are a lot of challenges whenever you're trying to market a game like this. Any game in particular, you have so much competition. A lot of people think that when you are marketing a game, that the only competition you have to worry about are similar games, but that's just not true. Because there are so many different platforms now that people can use to access games, be they mobile or Steam or any of the consoles, on top of the fact that there are so many more games coming out in this era than there were any other era before it. Right out of the gate, you have a bunch of challenges. You have who's going to see it, how are you going to get it out there, how much, if you don't have a lot of money, how do you get people to understand it without spending anything? And so that was our big challenge for Rocket League, was how are we going to get other people to be aware of this game? When the first game came out, it had a hardcore following, but it didn't take off. And so we had to consider all of these different elements of the audience and how to reach them, and who was the right audience, and were we coming out on the right platform? All these were questions that we had multiple times before release. And
it sounds like visibility was the biggest issue for you guys.
Yes, visibility was a massive issue, but one of the advantages that we have now is that when the original battle cars came out in 2008, it was at a time, like I mentioned before, it was at a time when there wasn't a lot of respect for PlayStation Network games or Xbox Live type games. And now gaming is a lot bigger part of the culture. It's more mainstream. You have things like Twitch and YouTube, which at the time were fledgling or didn't exist, are now massive media outlets, independent of publications like GameSpot or IGN. that we can now talk directly to people who might be interested in our game and have other people play our game and they can talk to their fans. So that was an advantage that we had that we didn't have before. Also shortening the title to Rocket League made it a lot easier to talk about and explain and write. You didn't run into any character limits, which is a true thing that the original game had to worry about whenever entering itself on storefronts. So,
was there ever one where it didn't fit in?
There are, from what I understand, so it was before I started here, but from what I understand, it did come up a few times where we had to slightly shorten it, or they had to make exceptions and do something custom for us. So it was a problem, but one that was easily fixed with by making it Rocket League instead.
Yeah. Presumably, with your job in marketing, you were really happy they didn't just put a 2 on the end of it.
Yeah, oh yeah. Well, for a while, we had joked that we would have it as a subtitle, so it'd be Rocket League, Supersonic Acrobatic Rocket Power Battle Cars 2, and then maybe something else. And for a while, there was a legitimate debate as to whether or not we should have some kind of inclusion of the original title, but we made the right decision, for sure.
Were you in the naming meeting for Rocket League?
No, the Rocket League was named right before I started, just a few months, right before they went into a closed alpha. And so I missed it, but I'm glad that they went the direction they went. I think it was the smart move, it was the right move, and my advice, had it gone the other way, as soon as I started, let's change the name.
Right,
for sure.
So can you speak to, I guess, the decision to go with PlayStation Plus? Like, obviously, it seemed like getting people into the servers was a big issue for you guys, but that's obviously, a big impetus for you on launch, but obviously massive risk-reward happening there.
Yeah, the reason we went PlayStation Plus was strictly a budget issue. And, well, I shouldn't say strictly, but it was a large factor. It was, number one, is we didn't have any money to spend. Our budget for marketing and PR was practically nothing. And so our big challenge was, how do we get this out to other people? And we had already had some pretty successful closed betas on both on the PC, and we'd started to work it on the PlayStation because we had a built-in hardcore audience there from the original game. And so our strategy was, if we don't have the money to market this game, why don't we let Sony market it for us? Because they put in millions of dollars a year in marketing their PlayStation Plus games, and they do it month after month, regardless of what the game is. They really put a highlight on it. It's on the storefront, everywhere you go, they mention it, they have blog posts, media outlets write about it, people have discussion videos on YouTube. So for us, it made a lot of sense to take that game and say, we're willing to eat the short-term benefit of money right now, for in exchange for the confidence that we had in the game, that people would still want to come back to it and support it either through DLC or tell their friends and they'd buy the game. So it was and it was a difficult decision though. It wasn't like, this is absolutely 100% what we want to do. It took a lot of discussions, and I still remember all the meetings we had, multiple, all the way up to almost before the game was announced for PlayStation Plus. We were on the fence, but ultimately we had enough confidence in the game, and we also needed some kind of guarantee that the game would at least hit a certain level, and that was the way to do it. And we never looked back.
Was there ever a worry that you were sort of reaching the limitation on the amount of PlayStation users that were going to want this game? Like, if it's free for a month, like a month is a long time in video game like marketing. Like having like every day new people are figuring out about it. Was there ever a worry that by the time the month is up, then you'll have all these people, maybe it would have benefited you for a week, but after a week everyone knows about the game. So it's like it keeps going and it's still free. Was that ever a concern?
We did have a worry that maybe we'd hit that ceiling right off the bat, especially since we ended up being the most downloaded PlayStation Plus game ever. I mean, when you have that kind of performance, you're like, now who's left? But we've sold nearly 2 million copies on PlayStation after that promotion. So we obviously we didn't hit that ceiling. And the only thing is, when you run into a situation like that, you can't overanalyze what the negatives are, because what happens is you can always find a reason not to do something. I would prefer, personally, giving it out to as many people as we did to, and letting word of mouth spread, and having this audience that can now support us long term through DLC and through other means, then send it out in the unknown, and now we have to rely on word of mouth only, but it's not free for anyone. No one has it. We have to hope that the smaller alpha audience was enough to get it going. Yeah. So for us, it's sort of like a lot of companies spend tens of millions, hundreds of $1 million in marketing dollars in order to get their games out there on TV and commercials and things like that. Our marketing spend was essentially to give up that money that we would have had we not given out for free, and use the quality of the game and the excitement of the players playing it to do our marketing for us on top of the PlayStation effort. So we think that that was worth it in the end. The game's done very well. We're approaching 8 million copies sold now. So we think lifetime, it was totally worth the gamble.
What's the breakdown of the 8? Can you say that? Like
Of the age of the players?
No, the 8 million between the 3 platforms.
Yeah, in terms of sales, it's definitely PC. PC is on top. I would say that that's about half of those sales, and then the other half is split pretty close between Xbox and PlayStation, depending on the given week and what kind of promotion we're going. But PC has been our most dedicated audience in terms of the hardcore set, how many hours the average PC player spends versus the console guys, how much they spend on DLC versus the console guys. Yeah, so it's been a much harder core audience there, but the fact that our console and PC audience is practically split down the middle is also really great for both audiences, because that's an entire other pool of equal size now that's feeding the other one for games. So for us, it's win-win-win.
It sounds quite unique as well to have that much of an even split between
those
two. You know, probably says a lot about where games are in 2016, maybe.
I think it does. I think it does say a lot of where games are right now, because I think there's this misconception, especially if you're an older school gamer, that people are very, dedicated to the one console or one platform only and are really xenophobic when it comes to playing on other platforms. But I think since games are now more mainstream and there are so many avenues to which you can play something, I think that those barriers are kind of eroding a little bit, and now players just want to play the best games with their friends no matter what they have. And that's been part of our big push to try to make cross-network something that happens on all platforms, because we believe that's the future. We think that the true future of games is everyone sits down and their device is like their phone is now. It's just something, this is the phone I picked because I like the company, I like the service they provide, I like the reach that they have, I like the hardware they've created. But it doesn't matter if I buy a Samsung or an iPhone or whatever it is, or in this case a PlayStation, a PC, or an Xbox, I can still play Rocket League and my favorite game with all my other friends who have all these other platform choices as well. So we think that is the direction of video games. People just want to have fun and they don't want limitations.
It seems like you guys are the sort of, a lot of other developers are looking to you to sort of get Sony over that line and to open up cross-console multiplayer.
I'd say that I don't know if developers are looking directly at us, but I definitely think that we're helping. And it is something, it's one of those big challenges where you have a long-standing culture of an ecosystem of how games are supposed to work within a certain setup. And it's part of our job and the job of the community and gaming as a whole to really push us out of that and push us forward and get us to a point to where that's no longer the thinking. And we've never disillusioned ourselves to think this is something that just happens overnight. So we're in it for the long fight. And we hope that over time the extra pressure, especially from the fans, because that's really the key, is to have that pressure from people who play the games. That eventually we'll reach the point where all 3 platforms and eventually more can play against each other without having to worry about what service they're using or what hardware they're on.
What were your sort of projections for revenue for Rocket League? Was this we were hoping it would make its money back, maybe make some more and you keep doing more contract work? Like, where were you thinking this was going to land?
Well, we had a couple of scenarios depending on the success of the game. We did have some scenarios where we would go immediately into contract work and work on something else, or we'd work on a couple of smaller projects and continue to support Rocket League through DLC over about 2 years was roughly the original plan. Then we had plans where Rocket League did much better and we could focus on one larger project on the side, something else that we wanted to do. But our projections were at most maybe 500,000 to 1 million units sold, depending on the success of PlayStation Plus and how well that took off. And that was also, interestingly, that's what PlayStation also expected when we were doing, because one of the services they offer to their parties is the analysis of the game. This is how we think it's going to do, this is the sort of players we think we're going to bring in, and they offer that to their third party, especially the independent guys, to help give you advice and what they think. So everyone was sort of expecting somewhere between that 500,000 to 1 million mark, and to us that would have been massively successful. The game only cost $2 million, actually under, to develop. But the fact that we hit our projections in the first week and then some, despite giving out the game for free, was both a pleasant surprise and a lot of work to keep up with that kind of demand. But once we established that this was a game that had a much broader appeal than we had hoped, then our focus changed entirely to, okay, we have this really successful game. How do we support it now? What does the community want? How do we keep it going? And now we're always trying to outdo ourselves in each release, and we set our numbers even higher. That we want to reach levels that no one, including us, ever thought we could get every time that we release something new. And so far, we've actually been to do it. We've outperformed all of our projections for all of our releases on Xbox, on PlayStation, on PC. Every single piece of DLC we've released, all of them are higher than we expected. So that says that either the game is really successful, more successful than we planned, and people are still hungry for it, or I'm terrible at figuring out how many sales we're going to make. But either way, the company works out in a beneficial manner for them. It works out for us. So whatever the answer is, I'm glad that's the way we're going.
I would love to know the numbers of how many people got this on PlayStation Plus. Something tells me that's not something you guys, Sony will probably let you talk about.
Yeah, we'd love to actually share every number we have. We're a pretty open company, and in terms of what we've done, but there are certain contractual obligations that we have, where there are certain numbers we can't disclose, and one of those is the number of PlayStation Plus users that we have. However, we have been very vocal about how many players we have. So, and I've let you know how many copies you've sold. So maybe some math you can sort of figure it out.
How many players do you have?
We have now almost 22 million players. So it's done very well, and that counts individual players and split screen. It doesn't differentiate between owners necessarily. It's just how many people have played Rocket League.
Excellent. Do you find a lot of, I guess, when you're looking at the various DLCs and whatnot, which is the one which has performed the greatest?
The best performing DLC is Supersonic Fury, by far, our first one. We think that this for a lot of reasons. It has two of the coolest cars. Dominus and Takumi are used a lot by quite a few folks. It was also only released less than a month after our game came out. So in terms of newness and hunger for the game, for a lot of people, even the folks that haven't been with us long term, there was something new for them to go out and get, and we think that helped. And also it has the benefit of just being the first one and the age and the accumulation of units. But it's even if you put that to the side, it's still been really successful. I think the install base on that is, what was it the last time I checked? Well over 26% on that one. So 1 out of every 4 Rocket League owners has that game or has that DLC, which is very impressive for us. We didn't expect the number to be that high. And it was also really inspirational for us because it showed us that people want more DLC, and that sort of then inspired us to try other things. We've tried individual DLCs like licensed cars and other packs with different themes, like our Aquadome stuff that we released just a few weeks ago, and before that over the summer, Neo Tokyo. So we like to experiment, and every time we release something and the players react to the way they do, it informs us better on how to make even more DLC in the future. So for us at this point, it's all just trying to give the community things they ask for, and we're going to give it to them as long as we can.
Like, you work on the marketing side, and it must be so difficult to try and infer this, but like anecdotally I hear, and I was certainly one of these individuals, you hear a lot of people went for their first DLC as well because they felt like they just wanted to throw some cash in the tip jar. Like, people who played 20 hours of this game and gotten it for free and just thought, yeah, like, there you go. Just from your perspective, do you think a lot of people did that? Like, there was just this like appreciation that people had for Psyonix?
Well, I don't know for sure that if a lot of people bought the DLC strictly out of an appreciation for Psyonix, but a lot of people have told us that, which is really flattering. The fact that if as many people who have told us that is an accurate number, and we can extrapolate from that in terms of sales we've had for the DLC, then to us it's like the ultimate compliment, because it's rare in video games where you can make something consistently over now 16, this is month 16 that we're in for Rocket League, and people are still supporting you and willing to go with you on new game modes and new DLC and see where you'll take them. And the fact that they keep coming back and saying, we just want to support Psyonix, I mean, it's the ultimate compliment, especially having worked in both the games media and on other games before this. I've seen the other side where you have people that aren't satisfied with what you're putting out, and they wish you in another direction. So the fact that we're making stuff that people are excited about and they want to help us no matter what it is, even something they wouldn't normally buy, to us is the ultimate compliment, and we don't want to lose that. So that every time we make something new, we're like, okay, we think this is what you guys want, but you tell us, and if it's not, we'll make the thing you do want us to make. And that's our whole approach. It's a completely community-driven game. No matter what our idea is, we sit down, we talk about it, and we talk about whether or not the community wants it, or if it's something they've asked for, if it solves a problem they've asked us to solve. And that's our approach to everything we make.
Did you say month 16?
Month 16.
Did you think you'd be working on this 16 months later? Did you think that people would still be hungry for more content?
We did think we'd be working on it 16 months later because we thought that originally our plan was about a 2-year support cycle. Okay. But we didn't think we'd be working on the game at this level. I mean, right now, so to put it in perspective, we've had more unique players in the last 6 months than we did the first 6 months. Right. And in the second 6 months, we had more unique players than we did the first 6 months. So every 6 months, we've grown over the previous. And so the game numbers in terms of active players is going up and not down, which is usually not indicative of any game. You have some of the massive performers out there, games like Call of Duty, and those games just can maintain large user bases over a long amount of time. But for us, the fact that we're still going, and we're going bigger than we have when we started, is both a compliment to us and also scary, because now we have to meet that bar or exceed it every time we release anything. But if anyone's up to the challenge, it's the guys we have here. They're really passionate about the game. They hop in streams. They're on Reddit like crazy. Everyone pays attention to the community, so we just want to make them happy.
Yeah. Presumably Rocket League is going to be a game, I mean, if 2-year support cycle was what you were considering before all the success, then I imagine that's probably been extended.
Yeah, now the minimum amount of time that we're going to support the game isn't even something we've written down. We haven't said we're going to stop in 2017 or 2018 or 2090. We haven't said that at all, because it's really more about evaluating what the community wants. And we think that that's the better approach anyway, rather than creating a hard date. The players have shown they want to come back and play. We're getting new players every month. People are buying our DLC in large numbers. So for us, there's no reason to quit. If people want the game, we're going to keep giving it to them.
It's funny because, for the longest time, whenever we did videos like this, it was preview coverage, or it was very much around the time of a launch. And in a way, when you're talking about a game a year after it's come out, or 16 months, then it seems like a sort of a retrospective. Yeah. But the way I've been talking to people about Rocket League since I came here today, now it kind of feels like when people watch this video in 5 years' time, they might still be playing Rocket League. Which seemed like a ridiculous concept in my head, just because I guess you put games in boxes, like you put everything in boxes beforehand. But is that the feeling here as well, that this is it's like Madden, it's like FIFA, it's like Call of Duty, it's something that is just inherently fun, and that as long as you guys nurture it, that it'll keep being successful?
Well, that's what we hope. We really want it to be successful, and like you mentioned, like FIFA and Madden, unlike those games, we don't have rosters that change every year, because you are the player, and it's more important for us to focus on things like new game modes, fixing things that show up that turn out to be inconveniences for the community, and finding new ways to keep them interested beyond what they've already had. So for us, it's very much a live game, an active game in a series. But I think the biggest challenge for us is reacting quickly enough, and in terms of these community requests, to where they're not irrelevant by the time we release them. And that's been why Psyonix is now busier than we've ever been. I mean, ever in the history of the company, working all the time on new stuff, because we want to react quickly. We want to give people what they want as fast as possible, and then move on to the next thing that they also want. And so for us, we think that it does have that possibility, especially since there are still other regions we haven't explored. Right. There are other platforms we're not released on. So there are a lot of things that we can do with the game that could make the game even bigger. And just the direction we take is what we're doing right now, is we're figuring out, okay, we're going to do this first, followed by these other two things, and then figure it out from there. And that's actually both fun and it's sort of like the original PlayStation conundrum, our PlayStation Plus conundrum, where is it a gamble worth taking? But based on everything we've seen so far, absolutely.
The sort of in-game monetization that you went for relatively recently, I guess it is, as we're recording this. What was the impetus behind that? Obviously, customization was a really important part of the game. Unlocks at the start, there was big drive for everyone, was trying to unlock the thing. What was the impetus behind putting that into the game? So
the main reason that we've added additional transactions to the game, and our crates and keys system in particular is the one, and we get that question a lot, is what is the reason that you added this? And there are a couple of reasons. There's one, believe it or not, a lot of people are asking us to do something like this, because other games that have been successful in the past, like Team Fortress 2 or Counter-Strike, they've had similar systems, and some people have liked certain elements and other people have liked them a little less. But the whole point of it is they wanted new ways to not only support the game, but also to get things that they might not otherwise be able to get. People like exclusivity. They like having things other people don't have. And we also wanted to find a way internally how to support our esports initiative, because esports is, we think, the future of the game. It's true competition, expanding on that. More than half of our audience plays competitively in the playlists. So that tells us that we have a very hungry, very active player base. And so our goal was, how do we find a way to account for increasing the amount of money that we can put into esports and increasing the amount of events that we have also, and then at the same time creating new ways for players to find and have items that might not be in the regular realm of unlocks. And for us, it seemed that the easy answer and that the obvious answer was to have a crates and keys system, because it doesn't hurt anybody. You can turn it on and off if you don't want to use it. So if you're someone who's against that kind of a system, don't have to worry about it. It's completely cosmetic. We don't sell any advantages, or there's nothing better that you can get there outside of your personal opinion of what's better visually compared to the other things. And it was just another way for us to really give the players a choice. And that's why we still have premium DLC as well, right? So if you don't want any of that stuff and you want to get something that's just the traditional DLC model, we offer that too. But just like our crate items, those are also cosmetic only. We don't ever want to sell advantage. We don't want to sell maps. So for us, it was a good way to account for our ongoing server costs, to grow our esports, both presence and prize pools. As you can see for RLCS Season 2, prize pool is much larger than it was for Season 1. And it also gives us the ability now to kind of do things we might not have traditionally done in the regular game, because they were a lot of work to get something done. But now if that's being subsidized, right, by being able to create these items, and now we can create more interesting, unique items without impacting the main game, we can do that. And so there are a lot of reasons to do it, and but I mean, it all comes down to the number one reason we do anything, and that's the community was asking for it. Maybe not directly in all cases, but they were asking for a way to support us in this way. They wanted us to create esports prize pools that were much bigger. We wanted to do all sorts of things along those lines, and this allowed us to do that.
Presumably, if you've got whatever 22 million people playing, or like how many active users at any one time, there must be significant cost to keeping that operating, I'd imagine.
Yeah, the server costs are very high. I don't know if I should say exactly how much they are, but they're very expensive. They are definitely in the 7 figures, and that's because we have an active player base of over 5 million players a month. And we expect that to continue to grow. It's been growing, and but that's okay. That's, even though the game is only $20 and some people have been playing it for 16 months, that's not their problem. The only thing they need to worry about is hopping into the game and enjoying it and supporting us when they want to. And if they don't want to, they already have supported us by playing our game. So our perspective is that that's one of the things that we have agreed to take on from the very beginning, and it's worth it. I mean, in terms of all of the players that we have who keep finding new experiences to enjoy the game, and seeing all the YouTube videos, and Twitch videos, and all the players that have come out, or even players who've discovered Rocket League for the first time, it's awesome. And so for us, it's an expense, but it's one that's well worth it.